Hey everybody, this is Eric Mack. Am I here? I'm in the corner for now, but there I am. Hey, I'm Eric, and we are live today. I'm here off the grid, but on chain in the Great American Southwest. And you know, Ethereum has been on fire this summer. It actually feels like 10 years. In that the meme for 2025 is that this is the first big ETH summer. And, honestly, we're not even halfway through the summer. The sentiment is up, the price is up, the vibes are up. And one of the main characters in ETH summer so far has been our own Joseph Lubin, Ethereum co-founder, Consensus CEO, and now SharpLink chairman. And that is a big part, that new role of his, of what's been driving all the positive meta. And he's talked lots about that elsewhere already. But today, let's go ahead and bring him out. We're going to be talking about the next phase of ETH summer, where I think the narrative is going to go. And it's also going to start to run through Linea. And Linea runs through Declan Fox, who's also joining us today. So we've got both Joe Lubin and Declan here to talk about Linea, Ethereum, and where it's all going, and also to try to answer a few questions. And of course, we've got a very special guest there in New York as well, joining Joe. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having
Doing great. Yeah, thanks, Eric. Thanks for having us.
Hey, Declan, how you feeling?
Feeling good. Yeah, how are you, Joe?
Pretty good. Lots going on. So much going on.
So much going on. And Declan's even in a move in the middle of all of it. Life doesn't stop. And Ethereum doesn't stop. Hasn't stopped for 10 years. And it's just getting started. And, to help make the next 10 years go smoothly, we've got Linea, which is, it's an L2, but it's different from other L2s, which is something that all L2s say. But, this isn't really about establishing a competitive differentiation for Linea. It's about establishing a new model for L2s and strengthening Ethereum itself. And in fact, we started to say that Linea is Ethereum. So maybe that's where we could start. If you could kind of break that down for us, Declan, like what does all that mean?
Yeah, so when we say Linea is Ethereum, there's many different parts to it, and maybe some people will take that as like, oh, Linea isn't necessarily Ethereum from the blockchain, but it's more about the ethos, like the technology itself. Linea has gone for this long journey of becoming, a ZK EVM. Of course, the EVM is used on Ethereum as well. We've gone through a governance proposal where Linea is actually going to be, the fund for Linea is going to be overseen by Ethereum-centric institutions. Our tokenomics actually echoes the same distribution as ETH itself on Ethereum. So really, when we say Linea is Ethereum, it's all about those, like the whole parts, really, the totality, and also just the general sense that Ethereum is going to be the future sort of settlement layer of the world. And we think Linea is going to play a key part of that.
Yeah. You mentioned, Eric, competitive differentiation, and no doubt all the impressive characteristics that we've stacked for Linea will massively competitively differentiate it. But I also think of Linea as competitive differentiation for Ethereum. Linea is one of the elements that has enabled Ethereum to scale. Ethereum is affordable now, and because of the regulatory infrastructure that's shifting rapidly, the builders and the users and the transactions are all going to be flowing to Ethereum. The totality of Ethereum, I think Linea is going to absorb an enormous amount of that. But if we think of Linea as 100% Ethereum compatible, if we think of Linea as an easy on-ramp to Ethereum, or expanding Ethereum's capabilities, that's the key differentiator. This is all about Ethereum becoming as usable, as composable synchronously and near synchronously composable as it can be, as we know it will be soon. And we're really proud that Linea is going to play a part in bringing Ethereum to mainstream.
And, another differentiator, while we're kind of talking about them, that allows Linea to play this key role in strengthening Ethereum is walking that ZK path. Can you talk a little bit, Joe, about why that's the way to go?
Yeah. So It's a long-running story. I can talk about some of the history of that, and Declan can flesh in some of the more technical details. So a long time ago, 5-ish years ago, we in our R&D group, we've had a really powerful R&D group for a long time, and that's because we've been building Ethereum clients for a very long time. We build Besu and Teku currently, but we built a bunch of clients in the past, and Besu and Teku have been around for a long time, leading the charge. So say 5 years ago, this technology started to look like it might be relevant to the real world. As many people understand, zero knowledge proof technology in various different forms has been around for quite a long time, but was never thought to be computationally practical. And so it started to look like there are certain breakthroughs started to look like we should be paying attention to this, our ecosystem. And the Ethereum ecosystem has been where most of that activity has been resident. And so we looked at it and we said, hey, this is going to be really expensive. Do we want to devote our resources to that versus more tangible things? We really thought it was 5 years, 8 years, 10 years away, but it did seem like it would be intrinsic to the technology at some point. We did understand that you could build layer 2, layer 3, layer 4 technologies relying on zero knowledge proofs. And the key breakthrough or the key realization was that some of us thought that it would end up making its way down into the core protocol. And we've seen that become very clear more recently with ZKVM and ZKEVM being contemplated to be enshrined into the core protocol, and we expect Linea will play a big role in that. And so we ended up doing the research. The team, 3 years later, said, hey, this is going so fast, we actually think we can build a layer 2 technology. And this was when the optimistic people were getting a head start. And so we placed our bets a long time ago. We doubled down a long time ago, and here we are. We are, I believe, going to be enshrined in the Ethereum protocol, and that's going to be incredibly good for Linea, just to make scalability really smooth between layer 1 and higher layers.
And Declan, you've kind of been in the trenches making all this happen, first as the head of product and then as the head of Linea. How's that looked from your vantage point?
Well, to be fair, people started on this work even before I joined Consensus. And again, standing on the shoulders of giants, all the people that worked on building the clients. Joe mentioned Besu. We've worked very, very closely with the Besu team to build Linea. So I kind of only, came in at the end and, sort of helped to play my part. But it's been amazing, I think, because it's all about long-term bets. I think, this space can sometimes reward, short-term thinking, but everything that I've seen from the technology, like the actual roadmap, 5-6 years ago, is all about what is the thing that's right for Ethereum, even if it takes, a decade to build and get right. Luckily, it didn't take a decade. It took a lot less time because of the amazing engineers and cryptographers. But again, I think everything we've done is really about long-term horizons, and that's what's going to make Ethereum successful, make Linea successful, and a key part of that as well. I do think what's really was worth calling out the technology for Linea is, not only are you going to be able to use the technology to kind of scale layer 2, and I think the lines between layer 2 and layer 1 are getting more blurry, is that we're going to use that same technology, as Joe mentioned, to be able to directly scale the L1. So you'll be able to generate a zero knowledge proof when you create a block on Ethereum, verify that with an Ethereum attester. And so you can almost have download and attest to a sort of Ethereum block on your sort of smartwatch, let's say, using Linea ZKVM technology, as well as using Linea as an L2. So yeah, super amazing technology. We're very happy. And obviously lots else happening in Linea beyond the technology that's very interesting as well.
Well, let's jump into some of that. We just announced yesterday some of the details of the plans for native yield. So tell me a little bit about some of the features that we've been rolling out and how they play into this larger plan.
Yeah, so we had a pretty big announcement this week, let's say. Lots of little bits in there that we're going to be fleshing out. One of those, as you mentioned, was the native yield, which is a pretty new innovation for the space. So what we're going to do is that all ETH that is bridged to Linea is going to be natively staked on the L1. Okay, so this is not using sort of an LST or liquid staking token. It's actually natively staked in institutional grade validators, completely non-custodial. That ETH then, not only does it secure the network, but it generates yield, staking yield. That yield is then going to go to Linea, and it's going to be used to sort of provide returns, sustainable returns for all of DeFi's participants. So if you want to go to a lending market or a decentralized exchange, you can actually get real yield and returns now, which is a completely new innovation in the space. And this will be rolling out on Linea in the next sort of couple of months. And then the other unique thing that we are sort of committing to as part of the announcement is that, as this sort of, amazing returns for ETH LPs takes place on Linea, we expect to see more capital come to Linea, but it's going to create an environment, a network where as it grows, we're going to burn more ETH. So again, Linea, 20% of all Linea transactions will actually burn ETH, which is amazing if you think about, sort of use the term flywheel. We're actually, providing a great risk-adjusted return for ETH capital, and then burning ETH as that capital actually grows the network itself. So those are some of the couple of product innovations that we announced this week for the Monday announcement.
And this unique value proposition that Linea is able to provide is the topic of conversations that we're having with the companies that have lots of Ether. So a lot of Ether begets a lot of Ether liquidity. So we anticipate DeFi on Linea is going to grow really giant.
And Joe, can you talk a little bit more about how this approach feeds into the larger vision that you've been talking about a lot this summer for Ethereum, and everything that you're working on within Consensus and SharpLink?
Sure. Well, there are lots of pieces, and lots of those pieces have some or significant connectivity. We're setting up positive feedback loops and flywheels, and the high level view is that we publish MetaMask, we operate in Infura, and is a decentralized extension of Infura. Linea's called a best-in-class technology. Linea is externalizing in some senses from Consensus to become a credibly neutral platform. Very similar to the relationship that Consensus has to the Ethereum network, where we participated in standing up a credibly neutral Ethereum platform, and we've been participating in building it at the protocol level and at the tooling level for years. And we don't control it, but we and so many others build on it and benefit from it. And so we expect to see Linea grow in the same way. MetaMask is going to do some really exciting things. MetaMask and Linea inside the company are working incredibly well together. So expect to see lots of synergies there. Our newish product, or let's not call it a product, let's call it a partnership with SharpLink Gaming, has yielded not just the lighting of a fire under our ecosystem, along with some of the other treasury companies doing great work, just vacuuming up giant piles of Ether to enable the supply-demand dynamics for Ether to get much tighter. So we think that's going to be incredibly good for the ecosystem. But also there's some great things that Linea can provide, as we just discussed, to both SharpLink Gaming as well as other treasury companies, and those treasury companies can provide giant piles of liquidity to Linea. And that's just what we're doing. We're also in many conversations and working directly with major financial institutions and both on the commercial side and sort of a governmental infrastructure like side. And so it is very clear to the world that that Ethereum is anti-fragile technology. The Ethereum ecosystem is made of anti-fragile people and companies. And that's led to essentially 10 years of perfect uptime. So major financial institutions and governments see that, and there is no second in that particular category. From their perspective, it's all about Ethereum.
Yeah, you mentioned the anti-fragility of the way things are set up, and makes me think a little bit of the unique characteristics of the governance that is set up for Linea that's coming into being around the Linea consortium, which is also kind of bringing in stewards from across the Ethereum ecosystem to help steward things and make sure that they are strengthening the entire ecosystem rather than just centralizing things. Can you talk a little bit about that, Declan? And or either of you want to get into this group of founding stewards and what the Linea consortium is, and how are these groups picked? Is there some kind of common criteria?
Yeah, I can maybe jump in first. A little bit of, I guess, background of like why we went this route, or sort of sort out a slightly different model, because this is unique again, even amongst like other blockchains and L2s. And really it's because in the tokenomics we have what is essentially Ethereum's largest ecosystem fund, and this is a long-term ecosystem fund that's going to be there to support open source protocols, to support builders, users, to make Ethereum successful and make Linea successful. So who better than to oversee that than a group of very accountable, very well-known Ethereum-centric institutions? And so that was kind of the driving force for why to do it this way. As well, I think the sort of efficiency that comes with a group of people who have a very clear North Star. Again, everything completely transparent. This is going to be a sort of Delaware-based non-stock company in America itself. I think really is a sort of new innovation of how to do the right sort of initial governance, which can, of course, develop over time, and we do expect to develop over time. But yeah, really sort of we have 5 sort of founding stewards right now, which is Consensus being one, SharpLink Gaming being the other, ENS Labs, Status, and Eigen Labs, sort of the founding stewards. We do anticipate having more members as part of this new consortium. And again, the sort of criteria will really be people that are very much focused around making sure Ethereum is great. So I don't know, Joe, maybe hand over to you. Do you want to sort of share a little bit more about the vision here for the consortium?
Yeah. Since we're progressively decentralizing Linea to create a credibly neutral platform, why are we not doing token-based DAO governance? The answer to that question is that as with so many of the characteristics of the Linea token launch and construct, we've learned from what works and what doesn't quite work yet that well in our ecosystem. We've talked to many projects, both degen projects and major financial institution and government projects, and just became clear to us that while we certainly anticipate that the Linea ecosystem governance will get progressively decentralized, and there will be opportunities for token voting and token governance and things like that. But if you're a very serious business, you really need to understand the governance of the counterparties that you're working with. And so in these early stages of bringing decentralization to the global economy, it became clear to us that a credibly neutral group of stewards who can appoint different committees to handle different responsibilities. We can have sub-stewards for different situations. We can have a steward group of financial institutions. They wouldn't be appropriate to be at the top level steward group because they're not perfectly Ethereum aligned. But nevertheless, having the right kinds of structures that can help companies and other kinds of legacy economy projects get comfortable with how to operate on Linea seem like the best path forward. When governance tools mature, when we get better at governance, decentralized governance in our ecosystem, when we need more decentralized governance in the Linea ecosystem, we will get there. We will explore it.
You know, one of the things that is going to be governed, as you mentioned, is probably the largest ecosystem fund in the space. And Joe, you sit at a pretty unique vantage point in the ecosystem. I think your fingerprints are in like just about every like interesting Web3 project that has caught my eye. I've done I spent a lot of time studying what happened to Civil, for instance. So like just given your experience and having your fingerprints on a whole lot of really interesting projects, what kind of things are you hoping that this ecosystem fund will support? What kind of projects? What kind of infrastructure?
So many diverse projects. Initially, we're certainly interested in supporting the DeFi ecosystem on Linea and across Ethereum. Identity, social graphs are incredibly important. I believe that the next few years in our ecosystem will involve adding networks of decentralized social graphs to our ecosystem. And imagine that there are platforms on which you can set up your decentralized ID. You can use attestations and other things to set up social graphs. You own your social graph or one or more social graphs. You can monetize them. You can invite people to your social graph. They can add content. They can add functionality to your social graph. You can reward them with tokens of your own minting. So things like that are bigger directions. And we've seen launch pads become very important in our ecosystem. And that's probably one of the roles of a stewardship group or a stewardship subcommittee to identify different launch pads with different kinds of focuses so that we can take this giant Linea ecosystem development fund and take some of those tokens and allocate them to launch pads, and those launch pads can set up different cohorts to incentivize the building, either with Linea tokens alone or Linea tokens plus nation state fiat tokens and things like that. So we'll certainly bring in some world-class VCs and accelerator runners, etc. So Linea is going to be a place for entrepreneurs to build. And importantly, it's not going to be strictly focused on building for Linea. If you have a project that benefits Ethereum Layer 1 or all of Ethereum, then I would be happy to fund that as well.
What about you, Declan? Anything to add for any other additional vision for what the fund might support?
No, really. I would say what I would like to see, because again, many of this is going to be driven by the consortium and many of the sort of subcommittees, as Joe mentioned. I would like to see people being very adventurous with like what they're trying to accomplish, because I still think we're so early with where we are in the journey of crypto, and we haven't really scratched the surface of what this technology can uncover. So of course, I expect to see lots of things around DeFi and payments, and especially on Linea, leveraging that like new superpower we mentioned, the native yield and all of this capital coming in. People are going to be able to tap into that for sure. But yeah, lots of the sort of new use cases that we can imagine where it brings more people on chain from sort of traditional, from industries. I think there's still a lot to do there. And so I hope people don't get too narrow focused and use this fund as a way to kind of experiment and really just keep exploring.
And we're not just hoping that commercially successful projects will be funded. We're really happy to see funding for pure research projects or applied research projects, whatever makes Ethereum stronger.
Awesome. All right, well, it's time to acknowledge what the majority of comments that I've seen scrolling by have been dealing with. So this is the point, producer Joe Nolan, where you can start to get the tokenomics chart ready to bring up. And so let's dig into it. Yeah, okay, there we go. So that's the tokenomics pie chart. Tell us what we're looking at here, Declan. How is Linea tokenomics going to work?
Yeah, well, the first thing you'll notice is it's very simple. And that's kind of a beautiful simpleness to it. It actually echoes the same distribution as ETH, where ETH had 85% going to the ecosystem, and 15% then going to sort of the foundation. Of course, in our regards, 15% is going to the consensus treasury. That's actually going to be locked for 5 years, which really is sort of unheard of in the space, and that kind of signals this, again, long-term thinking, long-term participation for consensus to have a stake and a sort of participation in the future Linea ecosystem. And then sort of breaking down the 85%, we've got 10%, which is going to the early contributors. And, just to kind of break that down, 9% is for early users, which is part of the LXP. There's going to be there's going to be a checker in the future, which goes through, how that's going to be divvied up for LXP. And we really wanted to sort of recognize, as a thank you and reward for all the people that have worked over the last, I think 2 years for Linea mainnet, but actually 3 years, including the Linea testnet, to get the technology and the network to a place where it is today. And then out of that 10% as well, we have 1% for all the strategic, partners, builders. So that's not just, applications like ZeroLend, like Molder, like EtherX, but also the communities as well. So eFrogs, Foxy, like all of these people that have helped to get Linea where it is today. This is really sort of an early contributor slot. And then you have the remainder, which is a 75%, which is this huge fund that's going to be overseen by the consortium. And importantly, and this maybe wasn't completely obvious in the announcement, this is going to be vesting over a 10-year time horizon, again, which is completely, sort of unique in terms of the ecosystem. And that's going to allow us to sort of sustainably make sure that we can fund all of those sort of innovations that people come up with and open source protocols, public goods, research and development. So what we're sort of looking at here is really a very unique approach to what it means to build an L2 that is suitable for Ethereum. And I often say this is a sort of tokenomics that reflects an open source protocol, rather than a corporation as well. So it's really about trying to build for the future and something that's sustainable. And that's what we have here.
Yeah, and I should take this opportunity to share the reality of the situation. The reality is that consensus has investors. We've taken in financing over the years. We have great investors. We have a board, and we did what I would call very difficult and heroic work to help our investors understand that we had an opportunity here to totally change the game. We're changing the game in so many different ways. We're burning ether. Ether's being used to pay gas fees, etc. But it was really important to us to build a chain that was really of, by, and for the community. And there were dynamics in the previous meta where investors got a lot of the tokens, and so investors are getting some of the tokens, but they're getting that through consensus and only through consensus. Consensus is getting 15%, and we're sitting on that for 5 years before using it, and it represents symbolically our commitment to lean in essentially forever on this technology that we birthed. And we're really grateful to our board and our shareholders for all voting to enable us to do this without extracting any tokens into the hands of investors. Game changer.
Agreed. And I've always personally been a fan of blockchain and Ethereum, what's going on here, because it represents an attempt to build a better system while still recognizing the reality of humans and human incentives, and that's what makes things go. So,
yeah,
I do appreciate the heroic.
Declan, when's the first investor unlock?
When's the first investor unlock?
Yeah.
Well, there is none.
Exactly.
There you go. Yeah, and I think it's really important because, again, I don't think this is like an obvious takeaway, is that, there's been a lot of criticism about like L2 tokens in particular, how they maybe performed over the last 2 years. And I think what we've done here is actually create a very unique tokenomics where if you can sort of play it out, effectively, there isn't really much sell pressure because you have this long-term thinking ecosystem fund, which is very structurally different to most tokenomics. And at the same time, a lot of people are very sidelined in the sense of, if you want to get involved in what might be the future sort of L2 for Ethereum, everyone's getting in at the same sort of level. And that's quite a unique playing field that you could only really find on some of the earliest protocols. I think it's worth calling that out for, for anyone sort of thinking about that.
No sell pressure, giant builder forcing function to build the Linea and Ethereum ecosystem out.
So we did have some questions from folks in our community that came up, and one of the most frequent ones we've seen is a lot of people asking about eligibility for the early adopters airdrop. So if someone has on-chain activity on Linea, and this actually describes me, but hasn't earned any LXP, I was very busy working for Consensus at the time, will they still qualify for the early adopters airdrop, or is holding LXP a requirement?
So all the details were revealed in the checker, and I know people want to know like when checker, when TGE. This is our number one priority. It's all, we've said now for a while. I think when I came home, took the leadership of Linea, I said I'll only give timelines when I know for sure, and I've sort of lived up to that so far, and I'll keep saying it again. I think the important thing is that what we're trying to do with rewarding not just users but any sort of contributor is like, understanding how much have they really contributed to Linea, and that's where the sort of on-chain activity comes in. How can we actually measure and then sufficiently reward people, as per their contribution? And I think that's the sort of philosophy that we're going with. But again, all the details will be kind of kept with the checker itself before the TGE.
And how about the token itself? Beyond the current utilities and things we've talked about, the fee burning and support for public goods, are there any plans to expand the role of the Linea token with additional use cases in the future? Yeah, so absolutely. If anyone has seen our public product roadmap, you'll see we have decentralized sequencing and proving. We want to decentralize the protocol itself. One could easily imagine the Linea token being, a very good asset to be used to sort of secure those solutions in terms of the protocol. I think, as Joe alluded to as well, like the governance as well can be further progressively decentralized. Token holders may be able to have a say in, which proposals get put to the consortium, or even have a vote of which proposals go through eventually. There's many different options, I think, and that's the kind of wonder of crypto, is that each year we uncover new use cases for these types of assets as well. Of course, one of the other unique things about Linea, which is going to happen, imminently, like after the launch, is that as the network itself grows, the Linea token is burned. So 80% of all, net gas fees on Linea actually burn the Linea token. And why that's really interesting is because if you look at the sort of, again, to talk about the pie chart or like the vesting schedule, it's such a long-term vesting schedule that we expect the sort of Linea, ecosystem to grow in such a way that actually it balances out the sort of incentives that would need to be put into like growing the builder ecosystem. And I kind of think of this almost like a sort of, an actual like sovereign state itself, right? You don't want to sort of give out too much to the population before you can grow. At the same time, as the population grows, it almost gives back sort of revenues in terms of taxes. And so you can really start to see Linea as this almost digital sovereign state that's very thoughtfully balancing out its economy, over a decade time horizon. And that's kind of one of the driving forces behind, the 80% burn mechanism for Linea, as well as 20% ETH burn, which is going to
be our sort of way to sort of provide value back to the L1.
Yeah, the burn is really helpful for helping people understand that holding the Linea token will I believe be in everybody's long-term interest. So obviously making Linea tokens more scarce will have good supply-demand dynamics for the Linea token, but there will be other things that the consensus works to do that will benefit holders of the Linea token. There will be, for instance, more tokens that we anticipate launching, and as I said earlier, there will be so many synergies that we bring to bear between our different products and some future tokens that we're working on.
Awesome. Okay, one more question on the Linea token before we start moving to talk about EtherX, because I can hear Trantor psychically communicating with me, wondering when we're going to talk about EtherX, and we will get to that. But first, I really want to hear the answer to this question, which is specifically for you, Declan. So if the Linea team isn't getting a portion of the Linea token drop, what incentivizes you and the rest of the team to stay and keep developing Linea?
Yeah, so great question, because people often look at L2s and kind of see the amounts that go to maybe VCs in the team as like a big part of the attractiveness there. I think the unique thing that we've done is we've sort of kept all of the team within inside consensus, which again, there's no sort of external foundation that the team is going to. Everything's staying within consensus, which firstly is fantastic for just like cohesiveness when we're talking about actually building the network. There's not like two different organizations. It's sort of the labs team itself are working with this sort of go-to-market team, and there's you can't underestimate the impact of that. Then obviously as the success of Linea takes place, that will also have a direct success on the future of Ethereum and the ETH token itself, which has a direct impact on the success of consensus. So the team is still very much well aligned in everything of Linea being a success, and it's kind of this unique incentive model that we've sort of constructed, is that's going to provide a great sort of driving force for the team, as well as obviously just the fact that Linea is very much a key part of Ethereum's future. And I think anyone that has joined or worked on these protocols, and again, I have a product background, so it's seeing the sort of work that you spend years doing to actually become a key part of the future internet, the future infrastructure, that in itself is like very much a very compelling sort of reason to come in day out and sort of work on these things. So again, lots of reasons why team is very committed to working on Linea, and also the rest of Ethereum as well, because we've been working on Ethereum for the best part of a decade now. Linea team has very much been a part of the team that helped build Ethereum before Linea was even constructed itself.
Yeah, we had a lot of discussions over an extended period of time as we were trying to work through the tokenomics of the system and how to decentralize certain aspects of Linea. And during that period, so we settled on a few different plans. Some of them actually rewarded people on the Linea team directly. But we researched and scrutinized what was going on in the space, and we found a lot of anti-patterns out there. We saw some metas that grew bankrupt and didn't yield the kinds of benefits that they were hoping to yield when they were kicked off. And at some point, we just stripped away everything and went to first principles, and we built up this new approach to externalizing some aspects of Linea and retaining important aspects of Linea inside the company, so that we could lean in a concerted way and bring all of our capabilities to bear and bring forth lots of synergies. And to their credit, the Linea team was on board. It's just seemed like the right and most powerful way to do things. And so everybody was aligned with the idea that Linea is and should be 100% Ethereum, and so it wasn't a hard sell.
Awesome. Okay, EtherX. This is not actually a new name. Tell me a little bit about the history of EtherX, Joe.
I think that's a question for me, because EtherX is maybe the first DEX project in our ecosystem. There's a gentleman based in and around Montreal, handle Cactux, and Eric Connor was a part of that project, supported that project, and we became aware of it, and we brought it into consensus to try to get it underway and make it successful. And there weren't actually a lot of tokens out there in the olden days, and so this very innovative individual tried to make it work, and it was complicated, and ultimately he ended up moving on to something different. So obviously we've been talking to Eric Connor for intermittently for many years, and in order to try to do what was right. So it was inside consensus. You can search EtherX, you can find some remnants of EtherX on GitHub, but we wanted to get Connor's blessing. He gave us his blessing, and so just sort of to honor the origins of that ancient attempt at DeFi, before anyone knew how to spell DeFi. We thought we would name it EtherX, and it's kind of a cool name. I'm digging the logo. I want the T-shirt. EtherX.
So EtherX is back. It's new. It's improved. Much like I gather the Naked Gun, which I'm looking forward to seeing. And it's also got a. I think there's rumblings of a TGE. Do you know anything about that, Declan?
Yeah. So I guess just to kind of focus a bit on like what EtherX is, how it works. This is like the latest iteration of what people refer to as like the MetaDex, right? So we kind of look at the history of decentralized exchanges all the way back from when Joe mentioned, there's been many different sort of versions, Uniswap v2, for example. Now you had the sort of what we call the v3.3 model, which you see, on Aerodrome, on Base. EtherX is that next iteration. So it follows what we call like the x3.3 model. And it basically solves the DEX trilemma, the decentralized exchange trilemma, where traders, where LPs and token holders all sort of benefit from the success of the protocol. And I think, again, one of the things that we see EtherX playing the part in the Linea ecosystem is that you need a sort of huge liquidity hub and key trading venue for all of the activity that's going to be coming to Linea over the next few months. So the key thing there is that EtherX has a TGE tomorrow where the Rex token itself will go live. So that's obviously a key part of the protocol, which is going to be sort of have its first epoch and the beginning of the voting for anyone that's holding the XREX token. So yeah, definitely go check that out. I agree the logo and branding is looking very good, and I think this was the laurel. I think the sort of logo of the dinosaur as well is quite sort of iconic, considering that the name was created before even Uniswap itself was thought of, like back in 2014. So really sort of connecting the ancient line there.
Awesome. Let's see, anything else on EtherX, Joe?
Nope.
Okay. Declan, how are things progressing technically for Linea? And how are we along this path of being able to really help create the infrastructure that's right for institutions and in moving some big chunks into of the global economy into Ether and Ethereum?
Yeah, so I think important things for institutions is sort of predictability. Again, Linea is completely EVM equivalent. We follow the decade-long billion-dollar R&D specification that Ethereum has ran now, almost exactly to the T. We're very much focused over the next sort of year, I'd say, on the protocol to get to what we call like a stage 2 roll-up. So this is again just about providing more of the sort of censorship resistant and security guarantees that the institutions are sort of seeking. And I think lastly as well, it's just making sure that the actual protocols themselves are as reliable and sort of secure as they can be. Like it's, for institutions coming into Ethereum or Linea, coming on chain perhaps for the first time, I think it's all about that onboarding journey and making sure they have, very secure, non-custodial way to access DeFi that provides the best risk-adjusted returns. And that's actually something that really drove our design for the native yield. We could have gone down many paths, but actually just to have a sort of native staking approach provided the best sort of secure and non-custodial yield that we could find ourselves in the space. So that was a real driving force behind that, what the institutions effectively want when coming into DeFi. And I'm sure Joe can allude to this, but we're starting to see a lot of them come into DeFi. So it's all come together at the sort of perfect timing, I would say.
Great. Well, if you guys have some more time, one of the questions here is how Linea plans to ensure transparency and regular communication with its community as it progresses, that's one thing we're doing right now. And so I've got several more questions that were generated mostly from the community that we can kind of run through rapid fire if you're game for it. Or if you want to say anything else, Declan, about plans around transparency and communication with the community.
I think just more of the same. I think Joe and I and many others from the team, all on Twitter, live streams, trying to share as much as we can. I think now we'll have the consortium as well. We'll probably see a lot of updates from the consortium itself in terms of like how this new ecosystem fund is being used. So I think just more of the same, really, when it comes to the sort of communication and transparency.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned the consortium because, so I've got one here, and I'm actually getting DM'd about this too. So, will the Linea consortium's decisions on how to allocate that ecosystem fund, will they be transparent and accessible? Will people be able to see who's chosen for which drops and understand why? What's that process going to look like? Or is it even set yet?
Yep. So we have the full sort of bylaws, which is basically the charter for the consortium coming out, at some point this, in the next week or two, which goes into detail, like how the process works. It's like a very, detailed thing. This is a sort of US based organization at the end of the day. The TLDR is, everything will be very transparent. There'll be board meetings. There'll be the full process followed. So people will be able to sort of dig in and understand, very clearly, how those funds are being used. And obviously there'll be sort of, quarterly reports and financial reporting based on what happens with the consortium. So the short answer is yes. For people who want to go and follow that, they'll be able to by, following the guidelines and the sort of reporting from the consortium itself.
The long answer is yes also.
The long answer is yes.
Great. So looking ahead at Linea's tokenomics, do you see the token playing a direct role in sequencing or consensus similar to models like proof of stake or proof of liquidity? Will people be able to stake the Linea token?
So the short answer is most likely. It obviously depends on terms of the protocol roadmap itself or as well what the consortium decides. So there will definitely be a possibility to stake in the future. I think the sort of guidance around what the token does comes down to the governance structure. But there'll be many other sort of utility and use cases for the token as the sort of years unfold. We're really sort of thinking, decades into the future here with what we've done with Linea.
Yeah, so we have some brilliant mechanism designers at Consensus, and we speak to brilliant mechanism designers out in the ecosystem, and we're always looking for ways to build things. There will be syncs for Linea tokens. That's really important. There will be different ways of deploying utility tokens. I like to call these things traps, where you're trapping, God bless you, where you're trapping a bunch of tokens in some productive situation. And so you can imagine that we will be constantly on the lookout for ways of destroying Linea tokens or making them more useful.
Speaking of which, another question along those lines, will Linea be related to future consensus airdrops? Will users of Linea be able to qualify for future Linea airdrops?
Without saying yes for certain, I would say that seems very likely.
Great. We all have lot of great ideas are always floating around. It always comes down to making them happen, right?
Yeah. So we're always looking to create synergies between what we do at Consensus and what's going on in the ecosystem.
Great. I think we've run through the majority of questions that we've got here, but unless we want to get really repetitive, basically. But any final thoughts for either of you on where you hope this will be in a year, 5 years, 10 years, how far you want to go?
I'll go maybe next year, and then Joe can go a little bit longer. So
Okay.
yeah, I think obviously Linea is still quite new in its journey. It's been mainnet for 2 years now. I think that 2 years has been a great sort of bootstrapping phase. We've seen lots of great communities formed who are still here to this day. We've seen lots of great builders deploy. I think the next phase of Linea is really going to be about turbo growth. So I think from where we see Linea today in terms of its its TVL, the number of builders, the amounts of assets on the chain, is going to be an absolute drop in the ocean compared to where we see them in just 1 year from now. I think that's the sort of scale of growth that we anticipate. And I think the amazing thing as well is that all the people that have been there for the last year, 2 years, like on this journey, I think are really going to play a key part in sort of like advocating for the values that have made Linea where it is today at this foundational point. So I really sort of as a sort of call to arms for everyone watching this and everyone that has been sort of along this part of that journey. Yeah, make sure we keep the sort of community of Linea strong and the foundational values of Linea strong as we do anticipate onboarding the world to Linea and to Ethereum. And I think that's all happening in the next 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, it seems like the Ethereum 10th anniversary and the celebration of 10 uninterrupted years of uptime is a watershed moment in our ecosystem. It is our mainstream moment. We are about to break through into mainstream culture. That's really clear by the uptake of regulators and legislators in the US and around the world, by financial institutions getting very serious about building on our technology. Stable coins and Ether treasury companies are bringing Wall Street or TradFi onto DeFi. And so soon it'll be just called finance. And while we love our technology, and we even love to be a little bit tribal about it in our ecosystem, I do anticipate that there will be just a fading into the background of the Ethereum technology and the Linea technology, but also I think this technology will be used to create constructs similar to nation states. So we can call them network states or protocols. I do think that Ethereum will be the foundational technology for Web3, for the re-decentralized World Wide Web, and the world systems will be re-architected on this new trust foundation and decentralized finance and Web3 using Web3 primitives. And so while I think Linea and Ethereum are going to be deep, incredibly valuable infrastructure, I also think that we'll see remnants of those things peeking out as people identify themselves as an Ethereum network state and a Linea network state. I think there'll be lots of those things. I think some of Linea will be deep infrastructure, and some of the higher layers of Linea will be constructs like ecosystems and companies and network states and even nation states with their provinces or states having their own construct. So look forward to not seeing most of the iceberg behind the surface, but it'll be nice to know that these things that still feel like Ethereum and feel like Linea are well-founded.
Gentlemen, super bullish, super exciting, super inspiring. And I thank you both for your time. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. The answer to most of the questions that were asked in the chat, I believe, is soon. And
40. Yeah.
What was that?
I think 42 was the answer to some of the questions.
42, yes, 42 is the answer. Which month 42? I don't know. If you figure that out yourself.
Yes.
But thank you to producer Joe Nolan behind the scenes, Tat and Nicole Adarme, and thank you Declan and Joe for staying up, for losing sleep as much as you do, and for building the future. Thanks again, everybody, and
thanks everyone for coming out.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate everyone. 20,000 people joined, which is incredible. So yeah, lots of appreciation to everyone tuning in.
Big tribe, amazing. Thanks everyone.
Believe in something, folks.